Picture this. A man drops to one knee in a crowded restaurant. Diamond ring gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Every head turns as he delivers his rehearsed speech about eternal love. The woman covers her mouth in surprise, tears streaming down her face as she says yes. The entire restaurant erupts in applause. Everyone watches this scene and thinks they're witnessing romance in its purest form. A beautiful moment where love conquers all, where emotions triumph over logic, where the heart leads and the wallet follows. But what if I told you that what you're really witnessing is the greatest scam in human history? What if that romantic gesture isn't about her feelings at all, but about his desperation? What if the entire foundation of modern romance is built on male insecurity disguised as chivalry? Today, I'm going to expose the uncomfortable truth about attraction that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, romance, and why men consistently pay the ultimate price in the game of human desire. Every romantic comedy, every love song, every Valentine's Day commercial sells you the same beautiful lie. That romance is about making women feel special. That flowers, chocolates, candlelit dinners, and surprise getaways are expressions of male devotion designed to touch the feminine heart. This narrative is so deeply embedded in our culture that questioning it feels almost blasphemous. But here's the reality that's been hiding in plain sight. Romance isn't for women. It never was. Romance is an elaborate performance created by men, for men, to solve a male problem that has existed since the beginning of human civilization. Walk into any jewelry store around Valentine's Day and watch the customers. Nervous men sweating over price tags, calculating monthly payments on engagement rings, asking salespeople if the stone is big enough to impress her. These men aren't shopping for her pleasure. They're shopping for their own survival in a marketplace where they've been convinced that love requires a receipt. The woman in these scenarios isn't the customer. She's the product being purchased. The real transaction is between the man and his own inadequacy, with romance serving as the overpriced solution to his fundamental fear of not being enough. Before we dissect how this system came to dominate modern relationships, we need to understand the original structure of human mating that romance was designed to disrupt. Throughout most of human history, access to desirable women operated on a simple principle. Power attracted options, and options meant choice. The powerful men, kings, warriors, merchants, landowners, didn't need to convince women to choose them. Their resources spoke louder than any poetry ever could. They offered protection, security, status, and survival. In a world where winter could mean death, and enemies could destroy everything you owned, the man who could provide safety wasn't making a romantic gesture. He was making a practical offer that no rational woman would refuse. Consider the legendary King Solomon, who maintained 700 wives and 300 concubines, 1,000 women. This wasn't romance, this was resource distribution. Solomon could offer each woman a lifestyle that no ordinary man could match. Palace living, servants, security, luxury, and the ultimate status symbol of being chosen by the wisest, wealthiest, most powerful man of his time. Now imagine being one of the remaining 999 men in Solomon's kingdom, watching the most desirable women disappear into his harem. You have no palace, no armies, no treasure chambers. You're a farmer, a craftsman, a merchant with a small shop. What exactly are you supposed to offer that competes with being a queen? This wasn't a problem unique to ancient Israel. Every civilization developed the same pattern. Powerful men accumulated the most desirable women, leaving average men to compete for whatever remained. The sexual marketplace operated on pure economics, and most men were priced out of the premium market entirely. Somewhere in the medieval courts of southern France, a revolutionary idea emerged that would forever change how men approached the problem of female desire. If you couldn't compete with resources, maybe you could compete with feelings. If you couldn't offer a palace, maybe you could offer poetry. If you couldn't provide armies, maybe you could provide attention. The troubadours and chivalric knights developed what we now call romance, but they weren't creating it for women. They were creating it for themselves and other men who found themselves locked out of the traditional power-based mating system. Romance was their answer to an impossible question. How do you convince someone to choose less when they could have more? The genius of this system was its positioning. Instead of admitting that romance was a consolation prize for men who couldn't compete on resources, it reframed the entire narrative. Suddenly, the man with nothing to offer except his emotions became the hero of the story. The powerful man with actual resources became the villain who, didn't understand true love. This wasn't accidental. This was strategic marketing. Romance took the men who were losing in the traditional marketplace and gave them a completely different game to play, with different rules, different scorecards, and different definitions of victory. Modern romance operates on a brutal economic principle that most people never consciously recognize. Men pay and women receive payment. But the currency isn't always money. Sometimes it's time, attention, effort, emotional labor, and the systematic sacrifice of male resources in exchange for female access. Watch any romantic relationship develop, and you'll see this exchange in action. He plans the dates, pays for the meals, buys the gifts, remembers the anniversaries, organizes the surprises. He invests time researching her interests, energy creating memorable experiences, money funding their social life. She receives these investments, and in return grants him continued access to her presence. This system trains men to view relationships as ongoing transactions, where their value is measured by their output. The man who stops providing romantic gestures, who forgets important dates, who suggests she pay for dinner, quickly discovers that his access was conditional on his performance. Women, meanwhile, are trained to evaluate men based on their willingness to invest resources without guarantee of return. The man who hesitates before buying expensive gifts, who suggests practical dates over elaborate ones, who questions the cost of romantic gestures is labelled unromantic and filtered out of consideration. The result is a marketplace where men compete to offer the highest level of investment for the same basic access to female attention that their grandfathers received without performing these elaborate rituals. Here's where the psychology becomes truly manipulative. Romance creates artificial scarcity around something that should be naturally abundant. Basic human affection, companionship, and physical intimacy become premium products that must be earned through increasingly elaborate displays of dedication. The woman becomes the gatekeeper of these experiences, while the man becomes the suppliant hoping to earn access. This dynamic doesn't emerge naturally. It's culturally constructed through romantic mythology that teaches both parties their roles in this exchange. Consider the modern dating ritual. The man is expected to pursue, plan, pay, and perform. The woman is expected to evaluate, select, accept, or reject. He demonstrates value through investment. She demonstrates value through selectivity. He chases. She chooses. This framework transforms natural human attraction into an elaborate audition process where men perform and women judge performance. The man who refuses to participate in this theatre is labelled lazy, selfish, or immature. The woman who participates too eagerly is labelled desperate or easy. The system creates winners and losers not based on genuine compatibility or mutual attraction, but based on willingness to perform predetermined roles in a romantic drama that serves neither party's authentic interests. The most insidious aspect of modern romance is how it forces men to compete against each other in increasingly expensive demonstrations of devotion. Each romantic gesture sets a new baseline that other men must meet or exceed to remain competitive. When one man surprises his girlfriend with a weekend getaway, every other man in their social circle faces pressure to match or surpass that gesture. When engagement rings become status symbols, men find themselves taking loans to purchase symbols of love that cost months of salary. When social media creates public scorecards for romantic performance, private relationships become competitive displays for public consumption. This escalation serves no one's authentic interests. The woman doesn't necessarily want more expensive gestures, she wants genuine connection. The man doesn't want to spend his life savings on symbolic displays, he wants to be valued for who he is rather than what he provides. But the system has created a trap where neither party can step back without appearing to care less about the relationship. The man who suggests scaling back the romantic spending is accused of becoming complacent. The woman who says she doesn't need expensive gestures is often not believed, because the cultural narrative insists that all women want to be spoiled. Here's the part that will make you question everything. Most women don't actually prefer the romantic man over the powerful man. They've been trained to say they do, taught to value emotional investment over practical resources, convinced that choosing security over sentiment makes them shallow. But watch their actual choices rather than listening to their stated preferences. When faced with two options, the romantic guy who writes poetry but struggles financially, or the successful guy who's less emotionally expressive but can provide stability and status, the vast majority of women still choose the second option. The romantic guy might get her attention temporarily. She might enjoy his attention, appreciate his efforts, even develop genuine affection for him. But when it comes time to make serious life decisions, she typically chooses the man who can offer her the lifestyle she wants, rather than the man who offers the most feelings. This creates a cruel irony. Men invest enormous resources learning to be romantic, believing this is what women want, only to discover that romance alone rarely wins long-term commitment from desirable women. The system promises that emotional investment will be rewarded with female devotion, but reality demonstrates that practical value still trumps romantic performance in most real-world scenarios. Underneath all the cultural programming about romance and true love lies a biological reality that hasn't changed in thousands of years. Women are still attracted to indicators of male competence, resources, and ability to provide security. Men are still attracted to indicators of female fertility, health, and beauty. Romance attempts to override these biological preferences with cultural narratives about what we should want rather than what we actually want. It teaches men that they can substitute emotional labor for practical value, and teaches women that they should prioritize feelings over resources. But biology doesn't negotiate with culture. A woman might intellectually appreciate a man's romantic gestures while simultaneously losing attraction to him because he can't provide the security her subconscious mind craves. A man might perform romantic rituals hoping to inspire genuine desire while secretly resenting the transactional nature of the exchange. The disconnect between what romance promises and what biology delivers creates relationships built on performance rather than authentic attraction. Both parties end up playing roles they don't naturally inhabit, trying to want things they don't actually want, and wondering why the magic never feels quite real. Every romantic gesture carries an implicit message about status and power dynamics. When a man drops to one knee to propose, he's literally assuming a position of supplication. When he gives expensive gifts, he's demonstrating his willingness to sacrifice resources for her approval. When he plans elaborate surprises, he's showing that her happiness is more important than his time or preferences. These gestures don't create equality in relationships. They institutionalize inequality. They establish patterns where his role is to provide and perform, while her role is to receive and evaluate. This dynamic might feel flattering to women in the short term, but it ultimately creates relationships based on obligation, rather than genuine mutual appreciation. The man in this system learns that his value is conditional on his output. If he stops performing, providing, or pursuing, he risks losing access to the relationship. This creates anxiety, resentment, and a constant pressure to maintain performance levels that may not be sustainable long-term. The woman learns that her value lies in being desired rather than in desiring. She becomes the prize to be won rather than an active participant in creating mutual value. This can feel empowering initially, but often leads to relationships where she's never quite sure if she's loved for who she is or for what she represents. Let's talk numbers, because romance has become an industry designed to extract money from men's wallets in exchange for social approval of their relationships. The average engagement ring costs 2 months' salary. The average wedding costs more than most people's annual income. The average romantic dinner, vacation, or anniversary celebration requires men to spend money they might not have on experiences designed to prove love through financial sacrifice. This system creates a direct correlation between romantic success and economic output. The man who can't afford expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, or impressive gifts finds himself at a disadvantage in the romantic marketplace, regardless of his actual compatibility with potential partners. Meanwhile, entire industries profit from male insecurity about romantic performance. Jewelry companies convince men that love can only be properly expressed through expensive stones. Restaurant chains market date nights as relationship necessities. Travel companies sell romantic getaways as investments in relationship health. The result is a system where men's financial resources are consistently transferred to various industries in exchange for tools to compete in the romantic marketplace. Men work longer hours, take second jobs, go into debt, all to fund romantic performances that may or may not actually improve their relationships. If you're starting to see how the entire romantic system operates as a wealth transfer mechanism from men to industries that profit from male anxiety about female approval, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. What I'm revealing today challenges decades of cultural programming, and there's much more to unpack about how this system affects every aspect of modern relationships. Modern romance has transformed authentic relationships into ongoing theatre productions, where men must continuously audition for roles they've already been cast in. The boyfriend must prove he deserves to remain the boyfriend. The husband must demonstrate he's still worthy of being the husband. The man in any romantic relationship finds himself perpetually on trial, with romance serving as evidence of his continued commitment. This creates exhaustion on both sides. Men become resentful of the constant pressure to perform romantic gestures, while women become suspicious of men who don't maintain consistent romantic output. Neither party can relax into natural interaction, because the system demands artificial demonstrations of affection. The performance trap also prevents genuine intimacy from developing. When every gesture is calculated for romantic effect, authentic spontaneity disappears. When every gift comes with expectations of grateful response, genuine appreciation becomes difficult to distinguish from obligatory reaction. Couples find themselves trapped in cycles where he performs romance not because he feels romantic, but because failing to perform threatens the relationship's stability. She receives romantic gestures not because she necessarily wants them, but because rejecting them would make her appear ungrateful or cold. Perhaps the most devastating consequence of the romantic system is how it prevents people from discovering what they actually want from relationships. Men learn to want what they think women want rather than exploring their own authentic desires. Women learn to expect what culture tells them they should want, rather than identifying what actually makes them happy. This creates relationships built on assumptions rather than understanding. He assumes she wants romantic gestures because that's what men are supposed to provide. She assumes she should want romantic gestures because that's what women are supposed to appreciate. Neither party questions whether these assumptions actually match their individual preferences. The result is couples who go through the motions of romance without experiencing genuine romantic feelings. They hit the prescribed milestones, exchange the expected gifts, perform the required rituals, all while wondering why none of it feels as magical as the movies promised it would. Authentic attraction gets buried under layers of cultural expectations about how attraction should be expressed. Real compatibility gets overlooked in favour of romantic compatibility. Genuine partnership gets sacrificed for performing partnership roles. Imagine relationships built on mutual value creation, rather than male performance and female evaluation. Imagine attraction based on genuine compatibility, rather than romantic choreography. Imagine partnerships where both people contribute according to their abilities, rather than according to gender-based role expectations. This isn't about eliminating affection, appreciation, or celebration from relationships. It's about allowing these expressions to emerge naturally from genuine feeling rather than cultural obligation. It's about creating space for both parties to be authentic, rather than performing predetermined roles in someone else's romantic drama. In this alternative system, a man's value wouldn't be measured by his willingness to sacrifice resources for romantic gestures. A woman's value wouldn't be measured by her ability to inspire romantic devotion. Both parties would be valued for their actual contributions to the partnership, their authentic compatibility, and their genuine care for each other's well-being. This requires both men and women to step outside the romantic narrative and ask themselves what they actually want from relationships, when stripped of cultural expectations about what they should want. Breaking free from the romantic trap requires recognizing that the entire system is optional. You don't have to participate in expensive romantic theatre to have meaningful relationships. You don't have to prove your love through financial sacrifice or elaborate gestures. You don't have to perform roles that don't feel authentic to who you are. For men, this means learning to value themselves based on their authentic qualities rather than their romantic output. It means refusing to compete in the expensive gesture marketplace, and instead offering genuine value through character, competence, and compatibility. For women, this means examining whether your relationship expectations have been shaped more by cultural programming than by personal preferences. It means considering whether you actually want elaborate romantic displays, or whether you've been taught to expect them. The path forward involves both parties taking responsibility for creating mutual value rather than one party performing while the other evaluates performance. The uncomfortable truth about attraction is that romance, as we currently practice it, serves neither men nor women's authentic interests. It creates artificial obstacles to genuine connection, turns natural attraction into performance art, and extracts enormous resources from men while providing women with substitutes for authentic intimacy. Men pay the price because they've been convinced that payment is the only path to female approval. They sacrifice their resources, their time, their energy, and often their authentic selves in pursuit of romantic success, as defined by a system that was never designed to serve their interests. The real tragedy isn't that men pay this price, it's that they pay it voluntarily, believing they're investing in love when they're actually funding an industry built on their insecurity and her artificial scarcity. True attraction doesn't require elaborate performances, expensive props, or artificial demonstrations of devotion. It emerges naturally between compatible people who value each other's authentic qualities and choose to build something meaningful together. The men who understand this truth stop paying the inflated prices of the romantic marketplace and start building relationships based on mutual value, genuine compatibility, and authentic attraction. They discover that real connection costs far less and delivers far more than the expensive substitute that modern romance has become. If this analysis of how the romantic system actually operates has opened your eyes to the price men pay for cultural myths about attraction, subscribe to this channel for more insights that challenge everything you think you know about relationships. Hit that notification bell because understanding these dynamics could save you from years of performing in someone else's romantic theatre while missing out on authentic connection. Share this video with any man who needs to understand that his value in relationships isn't determined by his willingness to pay inflated prices for artificial scarcity. The truth about attraction is that it works best when both parties stop performing and start being real with each other about what they actually want. The romantic system promises that if you pay enough, perform enough, and sacrifice enough, you'll eventually earn the love you desire. But the men who win in the long run are those who recognize that genuine attraction can't be purchased, performed, or earned through romantic gestures. It can only be inspired through authentic value and mutual compatibility. That's the real truth about attraction. It's not about what men pay, but about who they authentically are when they stop performing and start being.